The person injecting your filler might have a suspended license, but the board that's supposed to catch that, they're chasing refund complaints, workplace feuds, and Instagram posts while the real danger is already sitting in the treatment chair. I'm Dr. Kate D., founder and medical director of Glow Medi Spa, and this is Med Spa Confidential, where we expose the risks, the red flags, and the outright illegal practices happening inside med spas right now because you deserve to know who's treating you, what's being injected, and what happens if something goes wrong. Today, I'm joined by Shonra Weiss, a nurse practitioner and co-owner of Esthera Med Spa in Pismo Beach, an official consultant to the California Nursing Board, who has worked real investigations from the inside and knows exactly where the system is failing. You'll find out what actually triggers a nursing board investigation. You'll learn why standing orders are being dangerously misunderstood by nurses and medical directors alike. And you'll have to stay until the end because Shonra shares a case that will change how you think about filler forever. And the one thing the patient could have checked before they ever walked through the door. Shonra, thanks so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to dive right in and talk about what the nursing board tends to investigate, what's going on. What should people be aware of, especially related to medical aesthetics?
So it's a little bit all over the board, and I think that the nursing board is still trying to figure out just how med spas operate. So it usually begins with a complaint, either from an anonymous complaint, either a patient who's had a perceived adverse event. Often it's kind of sad to say a competitor, a disgruntled former employer or employee will submit a complaint, and then automatically they will launch an investigation. And they will come and even do, if it's serious enough, undercover investigations with hidden cameras, or they'll even surveil parking lots. It's pretty interesting.
Oh, wow. Will they do dumpster diving the way the FDA does?
They do
Like the garbage?
actually not dumpster dive, but they dive deep into social media, Instagram posts. They will DM someone that they are investigating and try to set up appointments. And all of that becomes part of the investigation that I look at.
So can you give some examples of the types of violations that are, I guess,
Mhm.
probably commonly investigated? I have an idea of what some of them might be, but I'm really
Yeah,
curious to
yeah.
know what you're seeing.
So obviously, good faith exams, that is, I think people are finally catching on to that. But a few years ago, I saw a lot of those, and the investigator would stage an appointment, go through a consultation, and literally right before injection, show a badge and basically catch a nurse performing procedure without a good faith exam. There have been a number of nurses or nurse practitioners operating with a suspended license. So those are the ones where they will surveil and they will investigate and interview patients who have received treatment. Oftentimes they'll do it in off hours, like on a Saturday or after hours when the office manager isn't there. So there's more deception going on than just operating without a license.
Well, let's talk about good faith exams for a second.
Mhm.
So you're saying you're an RN who can't practice on their own. They can only be
Right.
delegated to by law. So what's
Mhm.
happening is they're seeing patients without a good faith exam, which means that nobody's delegating, meaning no
Exactly.
person with the ability to prescribe actually saw
Mhm.
the patient.
Mhm.
So I mean, we've been talking about this on the podcast. It
Mhm.
is so hard to get a handle on like how common this is. But
Mhm.
for instance, I did do an episode where we looked at two different medical directors in California, both of whom were the nominal medical director for many,
Mhm.
many med spas.
Mhm.
And many of those were like RN only
Mhm.
locations where there's just an RN there. There's a medical director who lives elsewhere.
Mhm.
And and there's no one else seeing patients. So it's possible that they could be outsourcing that through telemedicine,
Hmm.
but a lot of times they're not even doing that. Is that what's happening?
Hmm. Yes, and they're operating with maybe a kind of a skeleton group of operating procedures that don't necessarily they're not specific to a patient. So I think what happens, and I see this a lot, that when the RN leaves an institutional kind of framework, such as a hospital system, and they're working in aesthetics, they are so used to having the guardrails there and, they can't operate outside of their scope. It would be noticed right away. And so a lot of times I think it's just pure not knowing that they're operating outside of their scope. And if you would step back and think about it, even when you work in, say, a critical care setting, which I used to, and you have drips that you're titrating to a certain blood pressure, that is specific for that patient. So you do have some standing orders, but that is specific for that patient. And what's happening is this autonomy kind of gone wild. And not to say that some of these nurses aren't, extremely skilled, but there are licensure rules to it. So that's where they can really get in trouble. And that's one of the reasons I got involved, is because I do care about the nursing profession and educating people that even though you're very skilled, you might, be, this amazing injector, you still have to operate with the same sort of rules that you would in a hospital or any other, organized healthcare system.
Right. So do you think they're actually confused about what standing orders mean? Because I've
Mhm,
seen this happen out there, like mostly on social media,
mhm,
where, so for instance, there was just a post put out by Spa Connect, which is a telemedicine company
mhm,
that provides good faith exams. They're very interested in legal compliance at Spa Connect, and they
mhm.
do a lot of education around that. But the headline there was, Oklahoma just changed the rules and defined, eliminated basically standing orders for med spas. And I think that that was kind of misleading, because standing orders has always
Right.
referred to a single patient. So I, as
Mhm,
a physician, write an order for, say, that IV drip or a insulin
mhm,
sliding scale, and then, if this, then that on that particular patient. And so the nurse goes and looks, and they titrate that to blood pressure, they titrate that to
mhm,
glucose based on that standing order for that one patient. But that
mhm.
only applies to the one patient. It doesn't apply to everyone in the ICU or any new patient who
Right.
walks in the door. And I think that what is happening out there is people have this idea that standing orders for Botox means that anyone walks in the door,
Right.
gets a
Right.
standing order of
Mhm,
16 to 20 units of Botox in their glabella.
mhm.
And that is wrong, because
Yeah.
every single new patient needs an actual evaluation
Mhm,
by somebody who's allowed
mhm,
to do that,
mhm.
which is a good faith exam, and a
Right.
prescription for whatever that is, right?
Right.
There's no reliable way to know if a med spa is following safety standards or cutting corners until now. The Med Spa Board certifies clinics that prove they're doing things right, verified products, licensed staff, and actual medical oversight. It's the difference between rolling the dice with your skin and knowing exactly who's holding the needle. If you're looking for aesthetic treatments, go to medspaboard.com to find a certified spa near you. And if you already have a med spa you love and they're not certified yet, please send them our link. Med spa owners, getting certified does more than build patient trust. It should also save you a ton on your malpractice insurance. Do the right thing and go to medspaboard.com. Keep listening, keep asking questions, and stay safe out there.
So the confusion is not just with the registered nurses when I see these cases. It is definitely with the supervising physicians or, like you said, very nominal supervising physicians and kind of, who will just sign off on standard operating procedures. They will delegate a telehealth or some other sort of situation for that good faith exam, but really, they don't understand that the standing order across the board isn't doesn't meet the scope of practice. And frankly, some of the most serious cases, all these other ones are regulatory stuff, but actual patient harm, which I do see those cases too, they almost always were involving a very remote physician supervision that they themselves didn't even know how to evaluate or manage the complication, which should be the safety net.
A real medical director is
Mhm.
someone who knows about the procedures being done under their license,
Right.
who can do them themselves, delegate them, treat complications, advise on different kinds of techniques, what machines to buy, when to, how to do the
Mhm.
protocol, all those things.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening out there more often than not is the person wants to open a med spa, whether they have a license of any kind or
Mhm.
not. They find a doctor to quote unquote be their medical director,
Mhm.
and that person doesn't know any of those things and doesn't provide any of those things. And may or may not know the risk they're taking by
Mhm.
allowing their license to be used to perform those treatments.
Mhm.
And of course, what's dumbfounding to me is that that doctor could be that stupid to not know, and that the nurse could be that. I mean, I just feel like
Mhm.
how can you not know
Yeah.
the way it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
You went to nursing school, you went to med school, but
Mhm.
I what I have seen people that I actually know and think are smart people, what I've seen, like talked to a couple plastic surgeons and a couple dermatologists where they've been working with an RN for many years. They know the RN is
Mhm.
very skilled and they trust the RN. So if someone walks in and says, "Hey, can I Botox in my glabella?" And they're like, "Oh, she's fine doing that. Like, I trust her."
Yeah.
Right. And
Mhm.
so they kind of sign off on it, not worried about it, even though that's not legal.
Mhm.
And I think that they don't totally realize it's not legal. So I've actually talked to several people like that who they have an RN in their office or in the med spa of their plastic surgery practice where the RN's kind of on their own doing all the aesthetics
Mhm.
and the plastic surgeon's doing surgery. And so the RN sees new patients and for Botox and stuff. And that's kind of an
Mhm.
intake for them. And that's totally not legal. I told one friend who's a plastic surgeon, like, did
Mhm.
you know that's not legal?
Yeah.
And he really was like, "Oh my god, like, he just didn't even think about it, like,
Right.
didn't
When they think
even
it through, yes, that's a prescription. This is,
yeah,
it doesn't have special billing because it's, a beauty treatment. And I think that's what's ended up happening with the industry is we get lumped into, I mean, it's medical spa, but it should be medical spa.
right.
People think
Yeah, let's put the medical
that,
back in med spa.
yeah. Mhm.
Yes, well, I mean, that's
Yeah.
another thing, you are practicing medicine. One of the most weird conversations I've ever had was with Brad Adato, he's a healthcare
Oh.
attorney,
Mhm.
he's a med spa attorney. And I was talking to him about this stuff, and he's like, "Well, a lot of people don't realize they're practicing medicine at all. They don't realize
Mhm.
it's a practice of
Mhm.
medicine." And I'm like, so it's funny because I guess because it's elective and people pay cash.
Mhm.
Um, in this country, I guess you can set up businesses doing all kinds of things, and if people will pay you
Mhm.
to do it, I suppose you can take the money. But in
Mhm.
healthcare, that's not legal at all.
Yeah, I think because nurses and I'm a nurse practitioner now, but I was a RN for many years. They're very used to taking orders. Someone tells them, what's wrong, what you're supposed to be doing in that institution. And there's always someone above you who is, going to keep you in those guardrails that they're not used to then having to be the person who's evaluating that and protecting their own license. And that's how I approach it to people is that I want you, I mean, I don't talk to the people in the cases, but just when in the field, people I know, to protect your license, you need to understand that you're putting yourself at risk by not having a good faith exam. And now people do the good faith exam, but it's kind of just, it's that even that's turning into a check a box. The spirit of it is that patient is evaluated for the services that you offer, that you're going to offer. Any contraindications are identified. It's explicitly stated in the chart. And those orders can be made for that individual patient.
Yeah. I think this is basically why I'm putting together this legal compliance
Mhm.
course for the Med Spa
Yeah.
board, because it really is to level the playing field and make it so that everyone has access to that information so they know how to do it
Mhm.
properly. Because I think that it's very expensive to consult a healthcare attorney. And I think that a lot of
Mhm.
people, they're gonna, "Oh, I'll do that if I have to," but they don't
Mhm.
start that way. And so they start off investing their own money in something that's totally illegal. And they have no
Mhm.
idea. And then over time, they
Right.
may find out little bits that are, "Oh gosh, I should have been doing that. Oh, I should
Mhm.
have been doing that." And when
And
really the whole premise of their practice is probably based on something that's totally illegal.
right. And what you don't want to, and I see this with some of these cases, is you can have someone who's really competent. I had a case where someone resolved a very complex VO, really a vascular occlusion, promptly and appropriately, and did everything right. Was a registered nurse, did have a medical director who was remote, but did contact, but it triggered an investigation because the patient complained. And then what happens is then if the board comes in with an investigation, they're going to turn over everything.
Right.
And they looked at administrative things that might be little things that we might all find in our own practices, but if they find something big like that, then it becomes really serious. So,
So I've been speaking more about that. I think the key thing, right, is that even if you do the right thing for the patient, if
mhm.
you ever get reported, even under bad, ridiculous circumstances, a
Yep.
competitor down the road that's totally
Yeah.
illegal themselves reports you for something, right? They're
Yeah.
gonna find every little thing about you. So every little
hmm
corner that might be cut, they're gonna find
hmm
that out. And now you may have done the right thing
hmm
by the patient, but now you're shut down anyway. Or you could
Right.
lose your license.
Frankly, at least I can't speak for the medical board. They don't seem to coordinate really well on these cases, which has been a frustration of mine because it usually is a joint failing in these cases.
Absolutely.
But the nursing board really doesn't understand how the practices need to act as well. And they may focus on something that's really minor. And so I do actually enjoy playing a role in showing how a nurse or a nurse practitioner has upheld the standard of care too. So it's not all punitive, so
Yeah,
yeah.
I do know what you mean about focusing on something that doesn't matter or
hmm
it's silly. Like there's one case that I knew about here in Washington State where the nursing board was doing an investigation of an NP who really like every other provider in the country was using a Botox vial for more than one patient.
hmm
Now, so Botox comes in
yeah.
100 unit
hmm
vials, and the original FDA approval was the entire vial for one person, which would be
hmm
an astronomically high number of units, and nobody does
Yeah.
that. And and this is what they were barking down was that.
Wow. Wow.
And that's essentially standard of care and has
Mhm.
been for, since 2003 when Botox Cosmetic
Mhm.
was introduced. So it's very interesting. Like, you know, I know that's not how the FDA approved it, but like nobody
Mhm.
uses that that way. And so, when really the bigger violations were elsewhere in this particular
Mhm.
practice. So this nurse
Yeah.
practitioner is like, oh my God, the
Yeah.
guy I'm working for is doing all these other things, but like that's the thing
Mhm.
the nursing board cares about. So
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
I'm curious to know, like, do you like what are the most ridiculous cases you've seen without naming names or giving anything away, but like,
Ridiculous or scary?
Harry, how about both?
Ridiculous is petty intra-office stuff that, is really clear that someone just has a vendetta against someone else and there's absolutely no evidence to support. It's a waste of investigators' time, it's a waste of my time. It is just I mean, maybe it speaks more to the culture of that business, but and things perceived, someone not getting a refund, for example, which has actually scared me in my own practice. I tend to be pretty liberal with refunds. I call it a marketing expense because I've seen people be very vindictive. Some of the worst things I've seen have been serious, serious complications that were ignored, mostly because I think that the nurse just didn't even know that that could have been a complication. And then a medical director who is, say, some sort of other, specialty with no training, and a patient discounted over and over again as, oh, they're anxious, they're this, and someone who ended up with some permanent vision loss.
Wow.
And
From
that
from
was really
filler,
disheartening.
like the filler vascular occlusion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, right out of the gate, it was, headache, nausea, blurred vision. I mean, really, you know, for you and me, like, okay, your alarm bells are going off
Adverse.
with
Yes.
those sorts of complaints. And one that will go to hearing where there was some permanent patient harm with a product that had been used completely inappropriately and caused some significant skin necrosis, but the nurse practitioner who didn't even have a medical director and had improper ownership really kind of gaslighted the patient that it was normal behavior. I think she was afraid to escalate it. And, the patient is permanently scarred. And her license had actually been revoked and back and, had some other criminal charges. And so these are things that if people just, were to do a license search, may have found out. But that license was encumbered before going there, and a decision that will affect someone forever.
Yeah, so permanent scarring, blindness, which we know are
Mhm.
like keep you up at night if you have a
Mhm.
practice that uses any kind of filler,
Yeah.
which is why I'm like, 100% against all non-dissolvable fillers. They should just be
Mhm.
banned. I don't know
Yeah.
why. I was
Yeah.
preparing this lecture for the next conference in
Mhm.
June, and one of the statistics I found from the MAUD database, so there's a reporting database of complications, and they did a look at malpractice and suits from aesthetics, and of course,
Mhm.
filler complications and vascular occlusion were up at the top. And what I found was so the majority are, permanent harm from non-dissolvable fillers. The number one
Mhm.
was Radiesse, which I'm
Mhm.
like, no, don't use it, but also no
Mhm.
Bellator. But and the other
Mhm.
thing that I thought was interesting was the number one cause of blindness from filler is actually doing the nose. And that was
Mhm.
surprise to me, but I thought it was nasolabial folds, but it's not. It's doing
Mhm.
the top of the nose, which also
Mhm.
like we will not do ever in our
Mm-mm.
practice because it's too
Same.
dangerous. It's too
Yep.
dangerous. So no
Absolutely.
filler in the
Absolutely.
glabella, no filler in
Mhm.
the nose. We don't do temples either.
Yeah.
Actually, we don't do tear troughs either anymore.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you're in the audience, if you're listening to this or watching this, and the person offering you these things is not explaining to you the risk of
Right.
scarring or blindness or, just what a
Mhm.
vascular occlusion is, like run for the hills. Because if they're not
Mhm.
telling you about that, then like what else are they hiding?
I'd like to always tell people that informed consent is not a form. The signature is just, a formality. Informed consent is explaining all of the risks for the procedure, the benefits, weighed with those risks, the alternatives, and even not doing it and having all of those patients' questions answered. No other, you don't have informed consent unless you do that. So.
Right. And it's not just a form that
Mhm.
you sign without any explanation.
Right.
It's supposed to be the person
Mhm.
doing the procedure that
Right.
consents
Mhm.
you. Now, in a lot of systems, someone will go over the consent with you, and then the
Mhm.
person doing the procedure, like the surgeon or whoever, will come in and
Mhm.
say, "Hey, do you have any questions about that consent before we proceed?" So
Mhm.
the explanation of the consent can be delegated. But
Mhm.
it's supposed to be the person performing it actually, watching you sign it, and they're supposed to sign it too. And and again, this is all stuff I just prepared for this legal compliance course. Not everybody does every little, dots every I and crosses every T, but
Mhm.
it really needs to be a thorough conversation and
Mhm.
explanation because people don't realize if they thought they'd go blind or lose their nose from this
Right.
injection, they would not go through with
No.
it.
Have you ever had someone who you're, going over the risks of filler and they've been getting it elsewhere forever and they're like, nobody's ever told me
Never heard
that.
that
Is
before.
that just with you? Like all of a sudden you're like, yeah, well, you should have been told that.
Absolutely. I mean, all the time, all the time.
Hmm.
They'll be like, well, God, they never mentioned that. I'm like, well, they
Hmm.
should.
Right.
And I can tell them, like, first, we only use non-dissolvable fillers. And two,
Hmm.
we have, 16 or 20 vials of Hylenex in the fridge.
Hmm.
And we've only had one in the history of Globe Spa, and that was, out
Hmm.
of 12 years, it's happened once. It was recognized right away, treated, patient was fine.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
you need to go to someone who knows that that's a possibility. And,
Right.
there are places where they have vascular occlusions all the time and they don't care. Like, I know that doesn't make any
Wow.
sense,
Wow.
but
Hmm.
I once was interviewing a nurse practitioner to come work for me. She didn't end up I did offer her the job, but she went to work elsewhere. But she had been working at a place that was a Bellafill place,
Mm.
and that was also owned by another nurse practitioner. And they had a disagreement because the other her boss wanted her to inject tear troughs with Bellafill, and she's like, "No, that's not
Hmm.
safe."
Oh,
But she
yes.
told me that
Yeah.
that place had about one occlusion a month, she said. And I
Wow.
was like, "Well, how the heck
Wow.
do they stay in
Yeah.
business? Like, how is
Yeah.
that?" Like, plus you can't
Wow.
treat them for
Mhm.
Bellafill, it's not dissolvable.
Mhm.
Well, I don't actually know the answer to that other than they did go out of business.
Our patients go home with it looks like a postcard, their filler aftercare. They get their sticker so they know that they received an FDA approved product that isn't expired. There are your, normal things that you see after care and their recovery. And then at the bottom, we have red flag, call us 24/7. And so we educate our patients on the red flags. Of course, we tell them when we're doing cap refill. We tell them what we're looking for. And then they go home educated on what they are looking for as well.
That's phenomenal.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's great. Maybe we need to
Mhm.
supply something like that in our legal compliance
Yeah.
course.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
happy to share it. Yeah, there's
I know,
no
I love
gatekeeping here. I just want good,
Yeah, I mean,
safe patients.
that's why I'm doing it. I think
Mhm.
that everyone should have these resources. I've talked to so many people, both on the podcast and then people who've written in on Instagram. Like, I didn't know that. Like, I listened to your podcast and I did not know that was the law. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to put that together so that it's accessible. And then also have all the documents you need. Like, that kind of thing would be a great addition. You know,
Mhm.
HIPAA forms and OSHA forms and, stuff
Mhm.
like that. So people have all that laser safety protocols, you know. I think that it's very difficult to provide things like consents because they're very, very specific to the place you are and
Mhm.
who's doing it and what kind of services you have. It's got to be catered to each individual service. So I think
Right, right. No blanket consents either.
no
So,
blanket consent, no generic
yeah. Mhm.
wishy-washy consents. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, the
absolutely.
board does know that. So they definitely have looked at that in a couple cases. So,
Are there
um,
any other cases that come to mind that you wanna share?
no, I think the vision loss and then the one that I'm currently working on are the ones that really just kind of punch me in the gut. There have been some that were really shocking. They'll release the text messages between the provider and the patient, and sometimes it can be abusive. And that was shocking to me that instead of owning a complication and while they're mismanaging it, you know, I've seen them accuse the patient of looking for free services and stuff that will make you scratch your head for sure. But there are people out there doing everything right, and they may have left somewhere because they didn't feel safe there. And then, that former employer wants to make their life miserable. And that's really hard to see. It's a hard position to be in, especially when I'm basically the translator from the board to either the administrative judge or the attorney general on, is this the standard of care? So, I take it really, really seriously. It's someone's career. And ultimately, I just do it because I care about the industry, and it's so young, and everybody's just kind of figuring it out. So my general sense is that people are trying to do the right thing. I mean, there are those outliers, but they just haven't done their homework.
You said earlier that the nursing board doesn't have a lot of coordination with
Mhm.
the medical board or I assume the cosmetology board. But if
Mhm.
you in your investigation find that the doctor was negligent or, at
Mhm.
fault, or that also there was an esthetician in the same place that was doing, or
Mhm.
wherever, that was doing something in violation, does the nursing board inform those other boards, or do they just rely on the public to report that?
They just rely on the public to report it. Usually, where I'll get somewhere with it is if it gets sent to an administrative hearing and I'm doing like witness prep with the deputy attorney general, I'll say, the medical board needs to be in on this, and they'll recognize that, and so they'll take it from there. So it's not in my scope in that role to then do that because I don't work for the medical board,
Right,
so
right. But the
um
nursing board doesn't
mhm,
have one of its, guiding principles isn't to
mhm.
form the medical board when they see a medical board violation, or
So, to be honest, I don't know because they're a little dicey about it because I have reached out to, the person that I deal with when I get the cases, and I'll say, "Listen, this is and can we do something about this?" And I don't get a lot of response, unfortunately.
interesting.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's surprising. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
uh,
I think the Board of Registered Nursing in California, and hopefully I won't get too, I think it's a very large bureaucratic organization. So I don't know if all the hands are talking to each other or not. So I don't have a lot of insight on that.
I don't know why it's not shocking to me that a bureaucracy isn't really, paying
Yeah,
attention to
yeah.
one hand and the other.
Mhm.
So getting back to your med, because you have a med
Mhm.
spa in
Mhm.
Pismo Beach, and you have a
Mhm.
really amazing collaborative relationship with your medical director. And
Mhm.
so I'm
Mhm.
really curious to know, like, how you were able to develop that, and how do we encourage that more? Like, how did that happen for you, and
Mhm.
how
Mhm.
do we make that the standard, you know?
Well, I think it starts with the spirit of the medical director understanding their role. Because when I formed my partnership with my partner, Dr. Megan Malzone, and then we have another physician as well, Dr. Carrie Fitchman. And so even if she's out of town, we have someone on site who's backup. And, choosing someone who understood that role from the very beginning. I came from a plastic surgery office where I dealt very closely with a physician on a daily basis who is also very involved. So from my standpoint, I can't imagine being out there on my own, not having a collaborative relationship. Even if I was a physician, I just think that you have better patient care when you have a team approach to it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, our medical director is in every single training, is observing, our nurses and NPs. We're a very heavy mid-level practice. We only have 2 RNs and we have 4 NPs and PAs, just because of the flexibility of that with their prescriptive authority. But she also teaches our patients. She does a monthly newsletter about health with our patients. This is not a someone who's off in another state who has just signed on to something. And there are a lot of these platforms that are doing that. And I just I don't know how that's happening safely.
I don't know either. I mean, many states do have a diameter radius that
Mhm.
medical director has to be, but not all the states.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I think that really needs to be changed. In like in California, those two guys that I looked at, I investigated just personally. One guy was in Napa and he oversaw at least 13 med spas that I could find, one of which was in Maine. But the rest were in
Wow.
California, but they were all over California, like,
Yeah.
spread all over
Mhm.
the state. And obviously he
Mhm.
can't be at all those places.
Right.
And I think that that's insane. Like, I think that, I don't
Mhm.
know, I have not looked up the rules in all the states about how far away you can be, but I would hope that would be a big one that the states would clamp down on, is you actually have to have a medical director nearby, you know?
Mhm. I actually had someone locally reach out about a complication who hasn't is kind of a nurse-led independent practice, and I was like, "Well, where's your medical director?" So, I mean, I'm happy to help because I wanna help the patient no matter what. I'm not gonna say no, but, that's to me, that's a perfect example. If you have to reach out to a local colleague because you can't reach out to your medical director,
Right.
inherently, there's something wrong there.
Yes, and that happens a lot in Seattle. We have an ENT who teaches ultrasound in aesthetics and treating complications, and she gets calls from all over the country from people who
Mhm.
don't know how to treat an occlusion. And
Mhm.
and she's like, seriously? Like, so, and there are all these people who don't have their own medical director and they don't know
Yeah.
what to do. I mean, they have one, but they can't call that person because that person doesn't know anything about aesthetics, and that's really
Mhm.
a problem. She got a call one time from a spa here in Washington that had been owned and made entirely by an RN. She had sold it to a private equity firm, and that private equity firm got the phone call from whoever was at the spa, who was an RN who wasn't the person
Mhm.
who sold it. What do I do?
Oh,
Um,
no.
and the
They're not
business
gonna know what to
guy, so
do.
this is now a business guy in private equity
Yeah.
on the East Coast calling
Yeah.
around to prominent physicians on the West
Mhm.
Coast, trying to find someone who's willing to see this patient because there's no
Oh.
medical director at all
Mhm.
to help.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
I'm
Yeah.
like, "Okay, that's a problem."
I'm not gonna sit here and say that complications happen to people who are inexperienced. They happen to everyone, and if you
Everybody.
listen to every top person that is experienced, and if they're being honest, complications can happen even if you do everything perfectly. So it's not a matter of if, but when. And so, you want to make sure that you have the right, protocols in place, the right people in place to do the right thing for your patient.
Yeah, you have to have, we call them code blanche, but like a practice run. Right, or at
Uh-huh.
least
Yeah.
update your team on the protocols
Mhm.
every year, go over it, make sure you always have everything you need
Yeah.
for that. You know who to call. Because I'm not a surgeon, I have 2 oculoplastic surgeons that
Mhm.
I'm friends with that I can
Mhm.
text, God forbid anyone needs
Right.
treatment for
Mhm.
like a retrobulbar inject, because I can't,
Mhm.
that's something I don't know how to do, but, like, I have
Mhm.
somebody as my backup, and I think that's really, really critically
Mhm.
important. I mean, God, knock on wood, thank goodness I
I
haven't had.
know, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
But, I think that the problem is that, if you don't know anything really, if you don't know your medicine, if you don't know, then you don't know the
Mhm.
complication that could happen. God forbid you
Right.
hit an artery. I mean,
Mhm.
and then, yeah, I mean, and I can imagine like that, the texts you were referring to, kind of gaslighting the patient,
Mhm.
or you really don't know that something bad could be happening. You
Mhm.
and then you blame the patient because you feel like they're shaking you down for something. Like, that's awful. That
Yeah.
person should not
Yeah.
be practicing medicine. Well,
Right.
anyway, we won't solve this all today, but I really do appreciate your work on the
Mhm.
nursing board, and I really welcome your spa just got certified, so I'm really excited about
Thank
that.
you. We're very excited about it. And I really love the concept that it's not gatekeeping, but it's a pathway. And so I've been trying to spread the word myself because this is not a exclusive club. This is a club we
Absolutely
want
not.
everyone to be a part of.
We want
Mhm,
to train everyone. We want to get
mhm,
everyone up to legal compliance, and we want to help them do it. And I did talk to Dr. Malzone about collaborating on an emergency
mhm.
protocol course so that we could provide, because what she's done is phenomenal in your practice and putting
It
that
is.
together.
We have a crash cart, we have pull-out cards, we do drills. It's really phenomenal. So
Yeah. So I
that's what an involved medical director looks like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that
Mhm,
if we can elevate the industry, if we can provide that kind of course for everyone,
mhm,
like, hey, like these are all the things you need to know. It's not gated
mhm.
information. This is stuff that's
Right.
really, really critically important for like
Mhm.
health and safety of our patients and the
Yeah.
success of our med spas. So
And the
I'm
legitimacy of the industry, it also, because these scary cases, they make all of us look bad.
well,
And
and they hit the news.
yep.
And and we all are like, oh God, not another case like that. And I think that, all of us kind of absorb the reputational damage
Yep.
that
Yep.
those bad
Mhm.
actors sling at the
Mhm.
whole industry. It's pretty terrible.
Mhm.
So well, thank you for helping spread the word.
Yeah.
And if you're
Yeah.
watching or listening to this and you work in or own a med spa, check it out, medspaboard.com. Or if you go to a fantastic med spa and you love it so much and they're not certified yet,
Mhm.
tell them to get certified or tell
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, we're really going to make a big difference. I'm very
Mhm.
excited. I just talked
Mhm.
to another insurance company today about
Oh.
doing a discount for certified. So we already have one through one insurance
Mhm.
company, but this is a different one that specializes in nurses, nurse practitioners, and PAs. So we want to
Fantastic.
help them out too. Yes.
Mhm.
So very excited for that. So anyway, Shonra, thanks so much for talking with me today. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, Dr. D, for all the work you're doing.
Thanks for listening. If this episode opened your eyes to something you didn't know before, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment telling me your biggest takeaway. I actually read them all. Join me on this mission to keep you safe and push this industry to do better.